This week on Africa Weekly, we focus on Madagascar, where nearly 80,000 cases of measles were recorded in the last 6 months alone. And we meet the young Cameroonian mechanic who has created a quirky, eco-friendly car made from recycled and recovered parts. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. Family members of those who lost their lives in last weekend's plane crash near Addis Ababa visited the site of the disaster on Wednesday to pay their respects and mourn their losses. The Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 crashed on Sunday morning near Bishoftu, a town around 60 kilometers southeast of the capital, minutes after an early morning takeoff. All 8 crew and 149 passengers on board were killed. An assembly of the UN Environment Programme opened in Nairobi the following day under a dark cloud cast by the plane crash that had been carrying passengers heading for the annual event.
As we mourn, let us reflect that our colleagues were willing to travel and work far from their homes and loved ones to help make the world a better place to live. The United Nations office at Nairobi is ready to support all those touched by this tragedy.
Ethiopia said it would send the black boxes from the deadly crash to Europe for analysis, as urgency in the search for answers mounted amid safety concerns for the Boeing 737 MAX 8. It's the second deadly crash involving this plane type in less than 6 months, prompting governments worldwide to ban the American aerospace giant's best-selling jet from their airspace. A number of airlines have now also grounded the plane.
There will not be a 5th term, and it's never been an option for me.
There were celebrations in Algiers following the surprise announcement on Monday that ailing President Abdelaziz Bouteflika would not stand for a 5th term. The 82-year-old leader also cancelled next month's presidential election. Following the initial jubilation, protesters returned to the streets, fearing a plot to prolong his 2-decade rule.
We cannot repeat the scenario of 1988. The government in power is not qualified to handle any transition. The transition must be managed by credible people who will emerge and who do exist in Algeria.
Guinea-Bissau's ruling party won Sunday's legislative elections, according to results published by the election board on Wednesday. However, the victorious African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde will have to rely on a deal with smaller parties to command a majority. Sunday's vote aimed to settle a nearly 4-year-old crisis that erupted after the president sacked his prime minister, who was head of the PAIGC. On Tuesday, the party formed an agreement for the PAIGC-led government with parties holding 7 seats. The one-time Marxist Party has ruled the impoverished West African state of 2 million people for most of the 45 years since independence from Portugal. At least 9 young children were among dozens missing after a 4-story building collapsed in Lagos on Wednesday. The children were attending a nursery and primary school on the top floor of the residential building near Itafaji Market on Lagos Island when the structure collapsed. More than 100 were feared trapped under the rubble. Emergency services say they have rescued around 40 people alive and that the area has now been cleared. Building collapses are tragically common in Nigeria, where regulations are routinely flouted. Acting Tunisian Health Minister Sonia bin Sheikh on Monday declared the country's health sector in a state of emergency following the deaths of a dozen newborn babies at a state hospital. It is believed they died of an infection contracted at the clinic.
Everyone must take responsibility for these accumulations over several years. We will not stop here. Today, the health sector is in a state of emergency. It's enough.
Bin Sheikh added that reforms were needed to restore confidence. Her predecessor resigned on Saturday in the face of a growing outcry over the deaths. Tunisia's public health system has been hit by management and financial problems that lowered standards and caused drug shortages.
Robertine has had to walk for 5 hours to get to this health centre, carrying her sick daughter on her back the whole way. As they were travelling, the spots started to spread, a sign of measles. Madagascar is in the grip of a major outbreak of the disease, which has caused almost 1,000 deaths in under 6 months. Children are more likely to contract measles if they suffer from poor nutrition. At just 2 years old, Frangeline is a case in point.
It's a sign of malnutrition. 6.3 kilos at 2 years old. That's the weight you'd expect of a 3 or 4 month-old child.
Robertine is a farm worker and cannot afford a wide variety of food for her daughter.
We eat rice, always with the same broth. We give her food because she often asks for it, but it's always the same broth with rice, because we don't have enough money.
In the next bed is 60-year-old Volozafi. She had to cross a river as part of her search for healthcare for her young daughter.
Sometimes she couldn't pass because there were crocodiles with the rising water levels.
I had water up to here.
As well as access issues, health professionals have to overcome entrenched traditional beliefs.
You know zebu excrement? If you boil that, it can cure measles, so I don't think that's what it is. If she had measles, the bark of the Laza Laza tree could also have cured it.
The World Health Organization recommends a 90% vaccination rate. In Madagascar, the current rate is 58%.
We find it unacceptable that children are dying of measles. It's not normal. We have a vaccine.
5.6 million vaccinations are being distributed around the country as health authorities battle to contain an outbreak that has already infected over 80,000 people.
Driving down the streets of Bafoussam behind the wheel of his pickup, Cedric doesn't go unnoticed. Made with recycled parts, Cedric's little blue truck is an eye-catching creation that often defies belief.
I'm sitting comfortably in a 2-seater car and with all the accessories. I'm surprised when I get into it and I see that the dashboard works like any other car, so he's really a genius.
A genius to some, Cedric is above all resourceful. After leaving school at 11 years old, he learned car mechanics in his uncle's workshop, making model cars out of bamboo. He turned a childhood interest into a lifelong passion and poured his savings into creating this planet-friendly vehicle.
I paid for some equipment before transforming it into what I wanted. I also bought some used parts like shock absorbers, tires, an engine, and other small parts. But the bodywork and axles made on site.
In Cameroon, the vast majority of cars are second-hand, so Cedric's new take on a used car has sparked interest on social media. Interest, he hopes, will help him to continue to develop and improve his creations.
I'd like to take this opportunity to ask the state of Cameroon to try to give people with great ideas the best conditions so that they can help us produce cars like this, to help Cameroonians.
Cedric is waiting on a partnership with the Cameroonian government, and in the meantime, he's already receiving private orders from Cameroon, Ivory Coast, and Benin. The rumor is his next models may include electric motors to make the small cars even more eco-friendly.
The Cape Town International Animation Festival, the only dedicated African animation festival on the continent, took place last weekend. US actor and producer Aaron Warner praised the region's nascent industry.
Computer animation itself is a young industry, but in Africa it's young, so people are really just starting figuring out how to tell stories in ways that can sell and that can break out. But it's incredibly promising.
That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.